Hi, I'm Susie Garden, and this is the Ageless and Awesome podcast. I'm an age-defying naturopath and clinical nutritionist, and I'm here to bust myths around women's health and aging so that you can be ageless and awesome in your 40s, 50s, and beyond. The Ageless and Awesome podcast is dedicated to helping women through perimenopause and menopause with great health, a positive mindset, and outrageous confidence. Hit subscribe or follow now, and let's get started. Hello, gorgeous one, and welcome to this week's episode of the Ageless and Awesome podcast. This week's episode, I'm going to focus on, it sounds a little boring, but believe me, the more you learn about this topic, I think the more you'll realize how much this is impacting you. I am talking about cortisol. And the reason for that is I've done a few videos lately on Instagram talking about how cortisol is running the show often in perimenopause and can impact weight. But there is so much more to it than that. And there's so much more to it than I can explain in a 1 to 2 minute video. So I thought, let's pop it on the pod and get you understanding the importance of this particular hormone, because cortisol is a hormone, and particularly how it can impact you when you're in your late 30s, 40s, 50s even. Specifically in perimenopause, but absolutely postmenopause, this is relevant as well. So let's get into it. Let's talk about some of the hormonal things. So before menopause, the body effectively kind of buffers cortisol and stress, because cortisol is a stress hormone. When we are in our fight and flight, it's one of the primary hormones when we're in fight or flight that starts that cascade of events that gets us in a position physiologically to run away from a threat or to fight a threat. And before menopause, when we're in that, even perimenopause actually, the body effectively buffers the cortisol and stress by balancing levels of progesterone and estrogen, okay? So as progesterone and estrogen levels drop during perimenopause, the body's ability to manage cortisol weakens. And this means it can cause symptoms because we're starting to get this elevated cortisol and the body's unable to buffer it as effectively as it used to. And interestingly, there was a study done, it's a little while ago now, actually, I think it was in about 2009, it was published, that showed that cortisol levels increased immediately after hot flushes in women, which I thought was really interesting because often, certainly when I used to experience hot flushes, you'd get like this slight, like a split second sensation of anxiety or fear. Certainly for me, it was more like this anxiety just for the tiniest amount of time. And it's something that many women do describe. And now we know that you actually are getting a physiological increase in cortisol at that time. And the thing is, high cortisol levels and menopause symptoms or perimenopause symptoms are very, very similar. Let me list some out for you. So fatigue, low energy, weight gain, especially around the midsection area, brain fog, changes in mood like anxiety or depression, difficulty sleeping, insomnia, cravings for unhealthy foods, because cortisol also interferes with your glucose metabolism, digestive issues like bloating, low sex drive, and increased aches and pains. So these symptoms of high cortisol are very, very similar to the symptoms of perimenopause. So that's quite interesting to me. And so now that we kind of know that our cortisol levels are interrupted, I guess, by perimenopause, elevated actually, if we're more specific, and that can cause symptoms, that really gives you an insight into why stress management is so important. It's one of the key things that I've been banging on for years on the podcast. And I wanted to kind of list a few habits that also can interfere with cortisol, and you'll kind of recognize that many of these habits happen when we're feeling stress. So one is having lots of coffee, relying on caffeine a bit too much, needing coffee to get going in the morning, maybe having an afternoon latte because you're just struggling to get through that afternoon. And some people even having coffee at night. And often when I ask people about coffee and I say, oh, how many coffees a day? And they might say, 2 flat whites. And I'm like, okay, are they double shots? And often the answer is yes. So really understanding what is in your coffee for a start, and making sure you know whether you're having a double or a single, because sometimes that's not quite clear. But also looking at, do I actually need this to function? Or is it just something that I enjoy? Because if it's something that you actually really need to get your brain going, to get your energy going so that you can get through your afternoon or get through your morning, then there's some underlying things that need to be addressed. I'm not saying you have to give up your coffee, but we want to make sure that your body is able to function properly and you're not relying on coffee for it to function. And the thing is, it can add to your stress. So in terms of your cortisol level. So this is really important. So other things that can kind of increase stress and also be used as a perceived stress relief is late night binging on the streamers. If you're staying up, binging your favorite shows and staying up late, it might feel good at the time, but it's also increasing your stress levels due to the lack of sleep and the blue light exposure if you're watching it particularly on an iPad or your phone. Remember, a good night's sleep is important for managing stress. So trying to get to bed by around 9:30 is kind of ideal to make sure you're at least planning to get between 7 and 8 hours of sleep, and so that you are not getting really overtired. Another thing that can be a stress sort of management or perceived stress management technique, but actually can increase stress, is hitting the drive-through or the Uber Eats and sugary snacks. And I know it's like super tempting when you're busy to just go through the drive-through to get dinner. But it is a surefire way to increase your stress levels, increase your cortisol, increase inflammation, put on weight, all of the things. And your body will benefit way more from real nutritious food instead. And that's a really easy one to overcome because it just comes down to, when you cook, just cook twice the amount. Freeze, so you've always got nutritious meals in the fridge. Another little habit is the old doom scroll, which I think we're all guilty of probably, spending too much time scrolling through social media. For me, it's getting into the videos and the reels and just video after video after video. And of course, that algorithm knows you so well, knows at expert level how to keep you on that app. You really have to cut through, either prevent yourself from looking at it in the first place if you know that's a weakness for you, or really limit your time. Maybe even pop an alarm on your phone so that you know when you've been looking for, say, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever it is, so that you make yourself stop. Because you can get this unnecessary stress from comparisons for a start. That's just the tip of the iceberg, really. But also, it's just dead time. You may feel like it's relaxing, but I think under the surface for many of us, it is actually a little stressful. So try taking a break from your phone and enjoy the calming aspects of real life. I know for me, I tend to, at 6 o'clock, my phone goes in another room and I stay well away from it. And very occasionally I start getting back into a habit of looking at it again, and then I'm really super strict. I'm in a super strict phase at the moment, and it really means that I'm enjoying watching the sunset, and I'm enjoying, my food, and I'm enjoying spending time with family and friends and things like that. So I really encourage you to really have a clean break from your phone at a certain time of day. Or evening rather, and obviously phone calls are a little different, but in terms of being on the social feeds, it can be pretty pretty nasty for the old stress, and also obviously the blue light interfering with your melatonin and your sleep. Another bad habit is the last minute everything. So constantly dealing with last minute deadlines can really increase your stress levels, obviously. I don't think that's rocket science. So getting organized by using tools like planners, task management apps, scheduling software can really help reduce stress. I find for myself, I use Pomodoro technique during the day so that I can really manage my time well. And Pomodoro technique is where you focus on a task or a project for 25 minutes or 40, whatever time you really want to make it. Generally, it's a 25 or a 45-minute kind of block, and then you have 5 minutes off. And then you can get back into it. And doing that really helps me focus for that 25. I tend to use a 25-minute. Really helps me focus and right, 25 minutes that's what I've got to do, and then have the 5-minute break. And that really helps me stay organized rather than procrastinating, which is something that I used to do without having any sort of technique and organization to my day. So trying not to be last minute with everything, and maybe trying not to take on too much as well. Another thing is toxic relationships. So spending time with negative or toxic people can really increase your stress levels. Another one that's not rocket science. It might be helpful to evaluate your social circle and focus on relationships that bring you joy, that bring you positivity. And it can be relatively challenging sometimes as an adult to expand the old social circle. That's something that last year I really focused on, and I got involved in some Facebook groups with some social clubs kind of locally, and that's really made like an incredible difference to my social circle. So I totally recommend joining like a local Facebook group, whether it's a hiking group or a social group or whatever, because that you would be amazed at how many women are looking to expand their social circle right now. And maybe this is just a product of being in Queensland with that post-COVID migration of many, many people from southern states. Certainly I'm meeting a lot of women from down south, but wherever you are, I'm sure you can find that kind of way to meet new people with a view to expanding that social circle. Right, back on track with my list. So skipping meals is another thing, because when you skip meals, if you think, I don't have time to have lunch, for example, that's a really strong one I get from my clients. I don't have time for breakfast, or I don't have time for lunch. Skipping meals can signal your body to increase stress hormones. So try eating balanced meals regularly. I'm a big proponent for 3 meals, no snacks. And that will help maintain your hormonal balance, because you're getting that insulin and glucose management in that 5 to 6 hours in between meals, and that will actually reduce your hunger hormones. Final one on my list at the moment is sedentary lifestyle. I'm sure there are many other things, but having a sedentary lifestyle actually can increase your stress levels. Try incorporating some physical activity into your day, like even just going for a walk. That can really help. In fact, I think it's one of the best things you can do is go for a walk, whether it's around your neighborhood, if you're lucky enough to live near some sort of nature like the beach or like national park or state forest, or even just local parks where you've got some trees. That can be just so good for helping manage stress. I think we forget that we're animals. We need to be around nature. It is something that I think we need on a cellular level every day, some sort of contact with nature. And so, if you can get out, have a walk. Even better is if you can meet a friend or a family member, because it improves accountability so that you actually do it on a regular basis. And it's just nice to connect with somebody and have conversation. So, I think this is probably, I'm just looking at all of the notes that I've written on this today. I think pretty much I've covered everything. The main thing when it comes to cortisol and maintaining a level that is sort of in our normal kind of range there's things like managing stress. So we know that there are certain things that help that. Deep breathing helps that a lot. Mindfulness, meditation, yoga, that kind of stuff can really help manage stress. But anything that brings you joy will help to manage your stress. Also, really getting quality sleep, establishing a really consistent sleep routine, ideally by going to bed and rising at the same times each day really helps. Like even if you haven't slept well, it's better to actually get up at your normal time rather than try and sleep in. That's what the research tells us. Moving the body, as I just was talking about, that really helps to reduce stress, regulate cortisol, also regulate glucose. Lots of whole foods in the diet, lots of fresh fruits, veggies, whole grains, nuts, seeds, all of those sorts of things, but also drinking lots of water. Particularly filtered water is really nice because it tastes better. A lot of people say to me they don't like drinking water because of the way it tastes. Filtered water helps get some of those chemicals out. I know I've been drinking filtered water for so long now that even when I have a shower, I can really smell the chlorine. And it depends where you live as well as to how nice the water tastes. Definitely where I live on the Gold Coast, the water's not fantastic in terms of taste. Relaxation, I've mentioned, and also, look at your caffeine use. Look at, am I really relying on caffeine multiple times a day purely because my energy levels are so poor? So really looking at, okay, how can I reduce that a little or increase my energy? And maybe you do need to really look at what's my diet like? What am I actually having the right amount of protein, the right amount of healthy fats? Do you need some support with your diet in terms of professional having a look at it, looking at it in the context of the stage of life that you're in, looking at it in the context of what you like to do in terms of your activity to make sure you're getting enough food, that you're getting the right macro balance, and that the foods are actually supporting your hormones. So I hope that has been helpful. I'd love to hear from you. If you've got any feedback or have any questions that you'd like me to explore on the pod, you can message me at the Perimenopause Path, remembering there's a little dot between the and perimenopause and perimenopause and path. Or you can drop me an email, hello@susiegarden.com. Thanks so much for joining me today on the Ageless and Awesome podcast. If you liked today's episode, I would love it if you could write me a 5-star review. It makes me so happy. Also, make sure you click the little plus button if you're on Apple Podcasts or the follow button if you're on Spotify so that you can get each new episode delivered to you every week. If you like free stuff, then head to the show notes and click the link to receive my free Radiant Reset Hormone Detox Guide for perimenopausal women. Now, this will only be available until the end of January 2025, so be quick. If you'd like to continue the discussion we've had today, head over to Instagram and DM me or follow me at the Perimenopause Path. There's a little dot between each word, just to make it a little bit more complicated, but I would love to connect with you over there.